You don't deserve a say." Those were my mother's exact words, cold and sharp, echoing through the boardroom like a verdict. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. The words hung there, impossible yet undeniable, slicing through 3 decades of loyalty as easily as a knife through paper. My mouth went dry. I could see the faint, triumphant curve of her lips as she leaned back in her chair, pearls gleaming under the sterile light. I had spent my entire adult life building this company, my father's legacy, our legacy. I'd been there before the first client, before the awards, before the glossy magazine spreads. I'd missed anniversaries, birthdays, and countless nights of sleep to keep this place alive. And now, with one sentence, my own mother erased me from it. "Mother, I don't understand," I managed, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. "You told me this transition would be mine to lead." She raised a manicured hand. "Alina, please, let's not be dramatic. You've always been wonderful support, but leadership isn't your strength," she continued. Support. That word stung more than the betrayal itself. Ryan, my younger brother, sat across the table, trying and failing to hide his smirk. His tie was loose, his arrogance perfectly intact. I could already see the future he imagined. His name on the door, his photo in the papers, my work claimed as his. I swallowed hard. "He's reckless, Mother. You know he doesn't understand the business like." "Enough." She snapped, her tone cutting like glass. "You've had your turn. Now it's time for someone with vision." Vision. That was her word for vanity. I looked around the room at the board members who couldn't meet my eyes, at the accountant pretending to check his notes, at the marketing director who'd once told me I ran this place like a quiet storm. Not one of them spoke. Not one defended me. "Then this meeting's over," I said quietly. I pushed back my chair, the metal legs screeching against the marble floor. "Congratulations, Ryan. I hope you know what you're doing." Ryan chuckled. "Don't worry, sis. I'll keep your little systems running." That did it. My heart ached, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. As I reached the door, my mother's voice followed me, low, cold, and deliberate. "Alina, you were never meant to lead. You're too soft. It's time you learned that caring doesn't win wars." I didn't turn around. I walked straight out of that room, my heels clicking like gunshots down the corridor. The world outside was bright and windless, the kind of day my father would have called good weather for building something new. I sat in my car, shaking. The betrayal burned through me, but underneath the humiliation, something else began to form. A steady, fierce calm settled over me. She thought she'd silenced me, but all she'd done was hand me the reason I needed to rise, quietly, strategically, and on my own terms. If I didn't deserve a say, I'd buy one. And when that day came, she would remember this morning, every word, every look, every ounce of contempt, and realize just how wrong she'd been. The first week after my mother's betrayal felt like grief. Not the kind that cries loudly, but the quiet one that gnaws at your chest when no one's watching. I kept expecting a call from the office. A simple, "We need you to approve this," or "Alina, where's the old report?" Something, anything, to prove I still mattered. But nothing came. They moved on as if I'd never existed. My name was stripped from every system, my access revoked, my seat replaced. The company I helped build, my father's legacy, no longer remembered me. I tried to convince myself I didn't care, but every time I saw a car pass with their company's logo, my stomach clenched. How do you grieve something that's still alive? By the 5th night, I turned off my phone, shut the blinds, and sat in the dark. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "When they lock you out, don't beg, build." He used to say it like advice, but now it felt like a challenge. That night, I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and typed the name, Project Phoenix. If I was going to burn, then fine. I'd burn bright enough to light my own path back. Starting over is a strange kind of humility. One day you're managing boardrooms, the next, you're renting a desk in a shared workspace that smells like instant coffee and someone else's dreams. I had no capital, no partners, just a list of old contacts, a laptop, and a quiet rage that kept me from sleeping. My first call was to a vendor who once told me, "If you ever go solo, call me." They didn't answer. By the 10th no, my throat hurt from pretending to sound confident. By the 20th, I was laughing at myself. "Phoenix, maybe I'm more like an injured pigeon." Still, I kept dialing. Every rejection stung, but every click of the phone also reminded me I was free. Free from pretending to fit in rooms that wanted my work but not my presence. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from an old client, Marion Blake, a woman I once helped when no one else believed in her business. She'd heard I left the company. Her message was short. "Need your brain on something. Coffee." We met the next morning. Marion looked at me the way my old self used to, sharp, certain, unafraid. "I can't pay much," she said, "but I'd rather work with you than your brother." That line nearly broke me, not from pain, but from the reminder that someone still saw me. I took the job. It wasn't much money, but it was oxygen. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel erased. By the second month, I had a rhythm again, the kind that's half adrenaline, half survival. I worked 16-hour days, living off caffeine and determination. My dining table became a war zone of sticky notes, proposal drafts, and client briefs. Some nights I'd stare at my screen until my eyes blurred, wondering if this was growth or just a stubborn refusal to quit. But little by little, results came. Marion's company tripled its efficiency. Then came referrals, a small tech firm, a bakery chain, even a logistics company. They all came for one thing: results. I didn't advertise, I didn't post. I just worked quietly, meticulously, invisibly. And it paid off. Then one afternoon, while sipping cold coffee and reviewing contracts, I saw an email in my inbox. Subject: Invitation to speak Annual Business Leadership Summit. My breath caught. That summit was my family's stage, my mother's event. And here they were, inviting me. I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there smiling, not out of pride, but peace. Life had a wicked sense of humor. It was raining hard that Friday, the kind of rain that turns the city into a gray watercolor painting. I was alone in my small office, the lights flickering as thunder rolled in the distance. For the first time in a long time, I let myself stop. No emails, no deadlines, just the sound of rain and my own heartbeat. I thought about everything I'd lost, and strangely, it didn't hurt as much anymore. Somewhere between the sleepless nights and the silent mornings, the pain had turned into power. Then I saw it, an article on my phone. Ryan Cole announces groundbreaking expansion, a visionary leader's bold move. My systems, my strategy, my sweat, all credited to him. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared at his photo, his polished grin, his expensive watch, and whispered, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Because I finally understood something my father used to say: power doesn't need to roar, it just needs to move in silence. That night, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't just rebuild, I would outgrow them. 2 months later, the cracks started showing. Clients I'd personally secured began backing out. The company's quarterly report leaked, losses up, staff turnover high. Ryan had fired half of the senior designers and replaced them with his friends. I shouldn't have cared. I should have enjoyed the schadenfreude. But Whitmore Designs wasn't just a company to me, it was family. And watching it fall apart under his arrogance hurt more than I wanted to admit. Then one morning, a former colleague, Grace, my old assistant, called me in tears. "Eleanor, it's chaos here. He doesn't listen to anyone. Your mother defends him no matter what. I thought you should know." Her voice broke halfway through. That call lit something in me. I realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about restoring something sacred that had been stolen. That evening, I met with an old friend of my father's, Arthur Levinson, one of the firm's earliest investors. He was in his late 70s now, sharp as ever. When I told him what happened, he frowned deeply. "I sold my shares years ago," he said, "but I know a few who still hold small stakes, and trust me, Eleanor, they're not happy with how things are going." "Then maybe it's time they had an alternative," I said. Arthur leaned back, studying me. "You sound like your father." I smiled faintly. "Maybe it's about time I start acting like him too." That was the night I began sketching out what would later become my quiet war plan, not to destroy them, but to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I didn't rush. I'd learned from watching my mother that impatience ruins power. While Ryan flaunted his new CEO status at corporate galas, I started meeting with old shareholders one by one. I didn't make grand promises. I simply listened, empathized, reminded them of the company's founding values. Many were disillusioned. A few were angry, and some quietly were ready to sell their shares. The irony, most of them sold to me without realizing it. Through small holding firms, silent partners, and proxy accounts, I began buying, piece by piece, the very company that had exiled me. Meanwhile, I took consulting work on high-end design projects under a different brand. It wasn't for money, it was for credibility. Every success I had outside Whitmore made Ryan look weaker, and the industry started whispering. By the end of that year, I had quietly secured nearly 18% of Whitmore's private shares, legally, cleanly, and unnoticed. Still, I told no one. Power, I realized, wasn't about being seen. It was about being ready. Christmas that year was strained. I visited my mother's house out of duty, not love. Ryan was already there, drinking brandy beside the fireplace, surrounded by smug laughter. When I walked in, Margaret barely looked up. "Oh, Alina, I didn't expect you to come." "I wasn't sure I wanted to," I replied. Her smile was thin. "Still holding grudges?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze evenly. "Just memories." Dinner was quiet until Ryan started boasting about a new client, one I knew well. "They're giving us the luxury condo project downtown," he bragged. I couldn't help but laugh softly. "Really? Because I just signed that client myself last week, independently." His smile faltered. "You're joking." "Afraid not." Margaret's fork paused midair. "You stole that deal from your own family." I leaned back, calm. "No, Mother, I earned it. You taught me competition, remember?" The table went silent. For the first time, I saw something flicker across her face, not guilt, but fear. She knew I was no longer the obedient daughter she could silence. That night, as I left, she called after me. "You'll regret this, Alina." I didn't answer. But inside, I thought, you already do. The following spring, Whitmore Designs hit a breaking point. A whistleblower leaked financial inconsistencies under Ryan's management. The press devoured it. Investors panicked. My mother called me in a fury, accusing me of planting the story. I didn't need to. Their arrogance had done it for me. 3 days later, Arthur called. "They're desperate," he said. "They're looking for a buyer to stabilize the board." I froze, my heartbeat quickening. "A buyer?" "Yes, majority control. They're drowning Alina." That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by old photos of my father and stacks of documents. My hands trembled slightly as I did the math. The shares I owned, the alliances I'd formed, the silent partners who trusted me. For the first time since that awful morning in the boardroom, I saw the full picture. They thought they'd erased me, but all along, I'd been writing my name back in ink they couldn't see. And soon, very soon, I'd make sure my mother realized that silencing me was the costliest mistake of her life. The first time I walked back into a room with my family's company logo on the wall, my hands trembled. The Business Leadership Summit, their event, their pride, was buzzing with flashbulbs, chatter, and the scent of expensive perfume. My mother was on stage when I entered, polished as ever, preaching about legacy and innovation. When it was my turn to speak, the host introduced me as Alina Cole, founder and CEO of Cole Consulting Group. No mention of daughter, no mention of family, just me. I took the stage, heart steady, voice calm. I spoke about rebuilding, resilience, and the courage to start over when the world writes you off. I saw heads nod. I saw eyes glisten. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, my mother, expression unreadable, but she was listening. When the applause came, it wasn't polite, it was thunderous. For the first time, people weren't clapping because I was a Cole. They were clapping because I was Alina. That night, I walked out of the hotel lobby with my head high and my heart light. For the first time since that betrayal, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was winning. By the third quarter, business was booming. Too fast, too sudden, the kind of growth that makes you double-check your bank balance twice to believe it. I had a small team now, 4 employees, all hungry, loyal, and brilliant. We worked out of a cozy downtown suite with sunlight spilling across the walls. On the frosted glass door, in clean silver letters, it read, Alina Cole Consulting Group. Every morning, I ran my fingers over that name. It felt like a prayer and a promise. Clients came from everywhere. Companies that once brushed me aside now sent emails with subject lines like, "We'd love to collaborate." I smiled at every one of them, remembering how rejection used to sting. Then came the twist. One of our new clients was a supplier for my family's company. They didn't even know who I was at first. But after our meeting, the man said quietly, "Funny thing, your brother tried to do what you just proposed." It started with whispers, rumors of financial mismanagement, delayed contracts, unhappy investors. I didn't go looking for it, it found me. One afternoon, Marion called me. "Your brother's company, it's wobbling, people are talking. Something about a deal gone bad overseas." I didn't react outwardly. But inside, a strange mix of pity and quiet satisfaction swirled. I wasn't praying for their failure, I didn't need that. But life has a way of balancing the scales on its own. Still, I reminded myself, no revenge yet. I wasn't here to watch them fall. I was here to build something solid enough that when they looked up, I'd already be standing on higher ground. It was late, around 11 at night, when my phone rang. The number was familiar, an old company executive, someone I once considered a friend. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low. "I shouldn't be saying this, but your mother's struggling to keep the board together. Ryan's made too many risky moves. Investors are nervous." I sat there, silent. The same board that watched me get humiliated now sat on shaky ground. He hesitated before adding, "Some of them they wish you'd stayed." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Those words, "they wish you'd stayed," hit like thunder. But I didn't want to go back. Not like that. If I ever returned, it wouldn't be as a daughter begging for a seat. It would be as someone who owned the table. After the call, I stood by my window and looked out at the skyline. The city lights shimmered like quiet possibilities, and I knew then something bigger was coming. By winter, my company was thriving. Our name appeared in magazines. I was invited to panels, podcasts, and mentorship programs. People wanted my story, the woman who was cut out and still rose. But underneath the success, there was a deep stillness, a knowing, because the same people who had once erased me were now calling my name in boardrooms, even if only behind closed doors. One afternoon, I received an email from a major investor, someone who'd previously worked with my family's company. He wanted to meet. "Just a casual discussion," he said, but something in his tone felt different, respectful, cautious, almost strategic. As I closed my laptop, a quiet smile tugged at my lips. I wasn't looking for revenge, not yet, but fate, it seemed, was starting to lay the pieces. The email came on a cold February morning. Subject line, "Joint Proposal Opportunity, Coal Corporation and EC Consulting." I read it 3 times before I believed it. My mother's company, my family's firm, they wanted to collaborate. Apparently, one of their major investors, the same man who'd met with me weeks earlier, had recommended my firm for a public sector project. My name was the top suggestion. I could almost hear my mother's disapproval from here. The thought made me smile. When the official meeting invite arrived, I hesitated only a second before replying. "Confirmed." I wasn't walking back to beg. I was walking in as a peer. And this time, I wasn't coming through the front door as a daughter. I was walking in as competition. The boardroom looked the same, cold marble, 2 bright lights, and the faint scent of my mother's perfume. But I wasn't the same. Ryan was already seated, flipping through documents like he owned the world. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. "Well, this is unexpected." I smiled politely. "Business tends to make strange bedfellows." My mother didn't say a word. She simply looked at me, measuring, calculating. For years, I'd looked at her for approval. Now I looked at her and saw a rival. The presentation went perfectly. My firm's data was cleaner, our strategy sharper. By the end, even their CFO was nodding. When it ended, my mother finally spoke. "Impressive work, Eleanor. I'll admit I didn't expect this level of independence." "I learned from the best," I said evenly. She didn't smile, but her eyes flickered just for a second with something I'd never seen before. Not affection, not regret, fear. After that meeting, things moved fast. Our joint bid won the project, and while the deal was technically shared, the credit leaned heavily in my direction. Headlines read, "Former coal heiress leads innovative collaboration." It stung my mother's company. I knew it did, but publicly they kept their composure. Behind the scenes, though, rumors grew louder. Ryan's decisions were erratic. Projects were delayed. Investors were losing confidence. Meanwhile, my consulting firm was scaling faster than I could have dreamed. We moved into a bigger office. I hired a CFO and legal counsel. Everything my family denied me, I built for myself. One evening, Marion, now my business partner, looked at me and said, "You know, it's poetic. You didn't fight back with noise. You did it with results." That line stayed with me, because it was true. The loudest revenge is the one earned in silence. The first major blow to my family's company came in the spring. An overseas merger collapsed, millions lost, investors furious. My brother tried to spin it in the press, but the cracks were too wide to hide. Their stock dipped. Key partners pulled out, and I watched quietly from my office window, sipping coffee, not with glee, but with clarity. You see, I'd stopped wishing them failure. I didn't need to wish it. Their arrogance had planted the seeds long ago. They were only now watching them bloom. Still, I couldn't ignore the ache that came with it. They were my family, my blood, my history. But as I told myself that night while locking up the office, family doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes it just means lessons. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. My assistant walked in, nervous. "Eleanor, there's someone here to see you." When I looked up, I froze. It was Victor Hale, the family company's oldest investor, the man my mother used to boast would never question her. He removed his hat, smiled, and said, "I'm tired of watching that company sink. You're the future, Alina, I want in." I didn't speak for a long time, because this wasn't just business. This was the moment, the subtle, irreversible shift of power. After Victor Hale's visit, things accelerated. He wasn't just offering investment, he was offering leverage. Over the next few weeks, Victor connected me with other long-standing shareholders of Coal Corporation. Most were frustrated. Tired of mismanagement, family politics, and declining profits, they still respected the Coal name, but they no longer trusted the Coal leadership. So I made them an offer, a quiet one. Buy into EC Holdings, my parent company, and in return, they'd receive majority influence when I made my next move. It wasn't hostile. It was inevitable. Every document was clean, every transaction legal. Piece by piece, signature by signature, I built my bridge back to the empire that once cast me out. Except this time, I wasn't coming back as the daughter they silenced. I was returning as the woman holding their future in her portfolio. And when I finally walked into that boardroom again, it wouldn't be to beg for a seat. It would be to claim the entire table.